And we're live again here on Ziti TV,
Hey,
our
Clint.
our generally weekly, kind of around 11 o'clock, not quite so scheduled event. Nice to see you. We have decided that we're going to take a look at the PR that you've put up. The last time around, we kind of, I think we made, did we make it all the way through? I know we made it quite a way through, where we're
I
trying
did a
to
little bit of
basically,
work since then to get the PR ready,
oh, cool.
but we got pretty much to the point where we'd identified how it should work, and so
Yeah,
then
and
I
just
went
as
and
a
did some more
recap,
stuff.
we were going to add a nice little blurb to the ZDCLI that lets you know there's a newer version available.
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, without further ado, maybe we should see if we can finish this off. I wonder how long it will take us and what we'll do after we're done. Will we just close? We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I guess a good goal would be to uh, navigate through the changes to make sure that that the implementation looks sound. There are no major problems. And then we should, I guess, if you're going to be the reviewer and approve it, then we should make sure that it builds, that I've done whatever diligence you would expect a ZD contributor to do.
Yep. All that will be done through the CI stack that's already out there. And I can
Okay.
tell that some of the checks were not successful already. If you scroll
Yeah.
down to the bottom there, I don't know why. Oh, it says the branch has conflicts as well. That's always fun. ZD Fabric Gateway is leaving us, so it's possible that we've already removed ZD Fabric Gateway.
This is pretty cool. So this code C review map, is that useful to you? Does that tell you at a glance kind of like the relationships between the different pieces that have changed?
Well, Ken, thanks for putting me on the spot. It is to date not been useful to me. This particular diagram is actually far more useful than many of the ones I've seen. So at least here I can see that main.go is accessing constants.go and other main.go is accessing updates.go. And, I don't know what the gray line means. I haven't given these diagrams a tremendous amount of thought because most of the time I see them pop through, they're really, really big and thus really, really teensy tiny. I can't tell.
Okay.
So I don't
Not super
see like
useful right now.
it doesn't give me too terribly much information, but um, other people on the team it seems to. So that's cool.
Okay.
21
Oh, A
days ago
depends on B
was
is the
really,
gray line there.
yeah.
Okay, so where did you want me to go? We had a little conversation here about how it should look and how it should be logged,
Yep.
and
So
this is the final result right here.
have you tested it? I can see that you have at some point tested it.
Yes.
What was the particular failure in this case?
What failure are you referring to?
So down below, keep scrolling down,
Okay.
and right, yeah, right there, right there. You can see we have
This
some
part?
webhooks failing. That's no big deal. We have a Mac OS build that failed. That's kind of a bigger deal. We have a Windows binary fail. I don't know what that's all about, and we have conflicts. So the first thing you're going to want to do is resolve your conflicts.
Okay. How about I rebase my fork onto release next?
That's exactly the right call.
Okay. Is that big enough?
Yeah, I would say it's legible. Sure. I'm at like half screen and I can still read it. Oh, do a diff first. Let's make sure that. Well, never mind.
I do remember what this one is for.
Oh, okay.
It's
Then it's not
for
so important then.
actually, I'm not going to add that. I'm just going to revert it because it's just for testing, changing
Ah,
the changing this constant or this yeah, so that it will generate the expected messages in different scenarios. So I'm just going to revert that so it goes back to the
well, see,
working.
now that's a fun overall Go question, which I don't particularly know, which is how can you, mock or change a constant like that
Mhm.
so that you could actually write a test? Not so much an
Yeah.
actual binary, but like, an actual Go test.
Well, in this case, this piece of the package is generated by ZDCI, which is our custom CI. So it works in my for local testing, but you're right. I don't know how to do that for mocking and testing. All right, that was. So now I need to go back to my terminal and try this again. Actually, before I do that, I should make sure it's fetched. So that upstream is named origin. These next. And I might as well squash these while I'm at it since I'm going to force push anyway. Those are all from me. We have to resolve conflicts. So it was just the ZD Fabric that you mentioned. Oh, it's ZD Fabric Gateway is going away.
It is, yeah.
So this one has a conflict. They're saying deprecation warning was added. So should I still add it, even since this component is being the ZD Fabric component's being deprecated? Maybe just don't add it. Yeah, I'm just gonna skip over it. So I'll go with current change on that. Just won't add it to ZD Fabric.
Totally reasonable.
And then,
I've been sitting here trying to figure out how to get your pill off the screen because your mouse was in the lower left-hand corner for a little while.
oh, so
Ah,
we'll just delete
remove.
this one rather than modify it since that one's already been ripped out. I think that's everything. Okay. I'm going to go back and look at our pull request now that I've pushed that update.
Yep. I think it takes like 5 minutes to run rubber tests. It should be in that
So
range.
playing in the role of a downstream contributor to upstream, a lot of these GitHub Actions workflows just don't work because of
On
the
a fork.
environment
Yeah.
variables thing,
Yeah.
where I don't have access to the upstream's environment variables. So even though the workflow is running in my repo, it well, it's running in the upstream repo, but because it's a because it's from a downstream from a fork, it doesn't have access to the variables in that case. Because I could have changed as an attacker, I could have changed the code.
Right. That's probably why the pull request or the webhook fails too.
Yeah.
You just don't
So
have that secret.
So we won't know if all of those things succeed until it's actually merged by a maintainer.
Yeah. That is something to be fixed.
It could just add one step to the Git flow, the GitHub work, the Git workflow rather, whenever the contribution is from a fork. it could go into a special branch, which is for merges from forks. You could have different permissions on that.
Do so what the last time around, I don't think we finished our code, right? So you said you made some changes?
Yeah, I kept working on it till I got it um, doing what I pictured here in the request.
Do you wanna cover what changes you had to make and,
Absolutely.
why?
Why don't we step through the change set now?
Yeah,
I think I have to go up here to get to the
files changed. Yep.
files changed. Okay. Okay, so we've got, I've um, basically added this line to each component, and I put this new function into the util package so that I could reference it. I noticed that we already have constants defined for each component, so I used those to refer to the name of the component. And so that the line is a little just slightly different in each component, where it uses the constant for that component to reference the name. My IDE helpfully added the necessary imports to each component. And then I thought this one was deleted. Fabric gateway.
Well, it's
Maybe I
showing
need
up
to,
as it's probably because you have taken it and it was removed. So scroll down, is the whole entire file new?
yeah,
Looks like the whole
it's
file's
showing
new, right?
added.
Oh, and it's got your release check in there. Yeah, it does show added.
So
Uh,
we'll probably have to, thought that that was the file that was just deleted. Maybe there was something else that was deleted.
I'm gonna go and look at the release next. See, I don't see a ZD Fabric gateway in release next at all. It's been deleted.
And it looks like I'm on main. So that's probably looks like I may have, no, I think the Git plugin just isn't working because I'm on ZD tunnel check version, which is my forked branch. I'm not sure
Odd.
what that's showing.
Are you sure those are the two same directories?
GitHub, ZD, yeah.
Well, if you hover over that ZD, I want to see it say sites, NetFoundry, GitHub. Yeah. Weird. Little N? What was it a little N that you were in before?
Now it's showing the right branch down here.
Huh. Some sort of cache problem.
And it's,
Oh, well, what if you go back to the you're back in the ZD Fabric main. Weird.
yeah. So this I thought was deleted right here.
Well, the whole folder needs to go away.
Yeah. Let me check on tracking here. That was unrelated. Okay. We want to be setting our upstream here to origin release next. We want to be tracking the fork, so that's fine. Like I re-added it.
Right. You just want to delete ZD Fabric Gateway from your pull request.
Yeah. Was it the whole directory that was removed?
Yep. Yep. Git's I don't really particularly like the way Git does that. If there's no files in the folder, it's not considered to be part of the SCM. Like
Okay.
so by deleting that one file, you delete both of them technically.
Right.
Yeah, push that.
Only expected files allowed. Okay, so that's an example right there of what's been done to each component to just call that new function. It's added
And
into the util package.
why did you choose to put it here as opposed to in the actual command?
In this, so this runs whenever the component is invoked by name,
Right, right.
right?
Yep. But the way that these components work and with Go is there's an
Mm.
init function that gets happen when you import this package. So in the Ziti controller subcommand package itself, there's going to be an init function. And probably in main. See the init function right there?
Yep.
Why not put that blurb in here?
I think that might be a better place for it.
I mean, honestly, I don't know if it is, but 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 oh, I see. It's down to the main. Um, interesting. Where is I actually didn't expect to see a main here. I thought that oh, because it's all subcommand. So
Is
um,
init like a reserved word in a Go
yeah, yeah. That's
module or package?
yeah. The only reason I pointed this out is because of init, and because I don't particularly love the way in which ZD chose to do this because I find it difficult. But init, when you import a package, if there is an init function, it will run it. And so if
Before
you
main?
yes,
Okay.
and so if you sometimes you'll see in a import statement an underscore in front of the import. And what that means is I don't actually use this package, but I want to import it specifically for the side effects that importing it provides to me.
I don't want to use this package, but I want to
No, no. So Go will
initialize it.
complain. Go won't compile if you don't use an import, right? So if
Right.
you add an import up there, but your code doesn't use it, Go
Mhm.
will not compile. It'll tell you that you have
Right.
an unused import.
That's
But
efficient.
sometimes that package has an init function inside of it,
Oh, okay.
and you want to import the package explicitly for the side effects of importing the package.
Hmm.
So you would add an underscore in front of your import. And that tells underscore and go means I don't I acknowledge that there's something that's required here and I no longer I don't want to deal with it. Just ignore it.
Like this?
Underscore space.
Underscore space?
Yep,
Just like
just like
that.
that. See how it's no longer red? It
Yeah.
means, okay, I am importing this package exclusively because it will call an init and have some kind of weird side effects underneath it, which I don't
Okay.
particularly I think it's bad design because it's but it's sometimes it's useful because there might be some sort of magic that you want done, but it's not necessary. All you have to do is include the package and the magic happens, right?
Okay.
So that's I only pointed it out for these reasons because it is a keyword. It is well, I guess it's a keyword. It's a special function
Yeah.
that
Okay.
you add to a package.
Okay.
So it doesn't really matter since these are in the same. But I pointed out because all the other subcommands, like if in the other, like say ZDCLI, there are a bunch more subcommands, and each package has an init. Go under command again and then go into any like edge, go into edge, and then in edge there will be somewhere. This is why I don't particularly like it. Somewhere in this,
Ooh, that's a lot.
right? There's going to be an init function in there somewhere hiding.
Oh, in one of them. So
It's
these are all
probably called
flattened.
that's right. It's probably in called root.go. That's where we've been putting it. And so there's probably, and I'll say probably because it doesn't necessarily have to be in there, but there is an init function somewhere hiding in this package that basically the act of importing the package adds a command to your Cobra command. And
I
it
didn't
might not be
define.
an edge because it might have been
Oh, right.
refactored out. But when I
Okay.
first went to Ziti and I was trying to figure out where what about enroll? Try well enroll. Oh, Ziti enroller is gone. There was I don't
Yeah.
remember exactly the command, but there were init functions inside of the packages, which is how it was
Mhm.
registering itself with, the root cobra command. I found it very obtuse. Do a space init instead of init space, because I think a parenthesis comes after the init function. So, like, if you put an open paren at the end of init.
Directly after?
Yep. Yeah, like that. See, so now there's the one, but it's inside of ZD command. So perhaps it was all refactored away.
Maybe so. Looks like
I don't
it.
know. I remember when I went looking for it, it was hard to find and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So
So it felt
so
like a
that's
hack to
like
you that
it
it was
did.
done that
Yeah. Well, like,
that
for
way.
example, like this command right here. What's that init function doing for you?
Okay,
I
looks like we're,
no, I'm
setting up
not. I
the
mean,
logger.
it's a it's a broader question. Not what is it actually doing, but like,
Is this
you
function
can
really
cut
your friend?
you can cut all of that text and just drop it on line 55, and it's identical,
Okay,
right? So if you scroll up some, is this in a
hence my
main
confusion.
package? Yeah, exactly, right, it's hence your confusion. So this is in the main package. So this is the first function that executes. You can't import this for side effects. Like, I don't know where you maybe there is some other place that imported this command, and having that init option like this is helpful. I don't know. I'm only
Okay.
pointing it out because I found it absolutely convoluted. And if you don't know it's there, it's like, how did this thing even, how did this even happen? All I see is subcommand.execute. I don't know how anything actually happened in here. And it's because it's all inside those init blocks.
So, it still seems like init is like, there's a pattern here, whomever wrote it that way probably had a reason, so
Of course,
even if only for
yeah.
aesthetic reasons, we could just move this up into the init function.
Yep. Certainly could. I mean, since you've already got your PR out there, I don't think it's necessary.
Oh, okay. Well, if it's
But
not a deal breaker for the PR, then yeah, I'll leave it like it is.
it's not for me. Somebody
Okay,
else could refactor it out if they have strong feelings, or if it doesn't work somewhere else.
okay. Alright, so, stepping through have a really good reason for it being that way, but we can leave it,
Yeah, I only
and
pointed it out to talk about in it.
so there'll be several different files that have the same pattern of changes. A little bit of formatting in the imports was done by
Yeah,
the
I
IDE.
I tend to dislike that. Some projects are actually more finicky about this as well. Like, they have
Mhm,
legitimate rules on how thou shalt import.
mhm.
I don't. I don't particularly have any. So, like, I just read right past these. But a lot of times, I know in other languages, organizing these imports becomes something that just keeps changing back and forth. Back in the Java days,
Dueling IDEs,
yeah, Eclipse
dueling
formats them one way.
linters,
Totally, Eclipse would format them one way, and IntelliJ would do it another way,
right?
and then you'd have to. It's just an absolute pain, and
That's
that's
like
sort of
the new rivalry of line endings. It's like
it totally is, and
linters going to
it happens
battle.
all over the place. Yeah,
Okay. So here's the main utility, updates. It's a new file, updates.go, and that is the home for that new function.
okay,
So all of the different components have a call to this function, which passes in the name of the ZD component as a
nice.
string
Yep, I know
from
we
the
talked about that the
constants.
last time or afterwards. I don't remember.
Well, last time we were just hacking it into the ZD tunnel component. And then when I realized that I could put it in a central place under the util package and call it from any component, I went ahead and continued the pattern for all the components.
Yep.
So we're gonna call an existing function that I found in
One. Yeah. Oh, well, I was sorry.
the
I was
same
already going through
package.
it. One thing I noticed right here is the panic. Generally, I will use fatals over panics in a CLI.
Okay.
Did you have a chance to try that? I don't know if you could. A panic will produce a whole stack trace and it'll be ugly. And as a CLI user, you probably don't care about it. A fatal will just print that line without the stack trace and exit right there. So if it was me, I'd probably use fatals on those as opposed to panics because the fatal's really the key. And if you have if somebody reports, failed to parse current build version, then it'll be obvious where it fell down.
So is the key difference there whether or not the process exits?
No, it's whether or not you get a stack trace.
It's whether you get a stack trace.
Yeah,
So
it'll exit
trace,
at fatal
okay. I guess first question is, do we want it to exit? This
for sure.
particular thing is checking to see if we're able to parse. I think we do want this to fail because we already have a soft fail on
So
the scenario where the API, the GitHub API, is not accessible.
I don't know if I want it to fail because if it panics and exits, then I cannot use it.
What I'm saying is we already have a soft fail that doesn't exit on the scenario where this function fails to get the GitHub release version from the API. So it won't prevent you from using the component if you don't have internet access, if the
I
API
see.
is
And
not
it
reachable over HTTP.
now another interesting question. I would probably do it this way, but you haven't returned an error. Instead, you have chosen to return. Is there a reason why you picked this pattern?
I didn't want to completely disable the Ziti component if it's unable to reach the GitHub API.
Well, what I mean is a lot of times your function, instead of panicking itself like this, is it will return error. And then the callee, its job is to test whether your function returns error or not.
Are
Like
you referring to this?
line
Okay.
34, instead
Ah,
of returning a reason for a failure, you are simply returning. So if this log release check failed as a consumer, I would get the failed to find GitHub with the error. I would get that message because you
right,
have printed it out,
right.
but you've printed it at debug. So if I'm not running at debug, I won't know what
Then
has
you wouldn't
happened
see
here.
anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in fact, one thing is that probably should be a warning as opposed to a debug. And then I would still soft return. The other option is also to simply return with an error and then make the commands which are invoking log release version check handle that error. They would do the if error doesn't equal nil stuff.
Okay. I see.
I'm just wondering if you chose this pattern over that pattern for a reason.
Okay. So yeah, I thought to handle it the same for all of the different components. So to centralize the handling in the function that is centrally located in the util package seemed to make the most sense.
Well, sure, it would still be one function. The only difference is the function's declaration would be different, right? Instead of log release version check ZD component string, it would be log release version check ZD component string error. And then in every function that invokes this
Gotcha.
one would have to catch or test that. Well,
Would
should
have
catch or
to.
test that.
Right.
Doesn't have to. No, in fact, let's do this. This will be a fun experiment. No, it's after the parenthesis that indicates your return values. And fun fact in error, all one word, in Go, you can actually put multiple return statements. So you will often see a tuple returned, like
Okay.
a boolean along with an error. And so sometimes you'll see a pattern that tests for that response that says, and oftentimes you'll see the word OK, wrap it in parens, um, a paren in front of boolean after error. Yeah.
Tuple.
And now, yep, now down on 34, you can change it to false, comma, quote, some error. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Comma, some error. Just yeah. No, no. Put some. It's like errors errors.new. Errors. It's a package. Yep. .new. And just put some quotes. Doesn't matter. You gotta give it a string. What the error is. No, some quotes. Some string literal. Yeah, perfect. And then you'll have to fix down below as well because it doesn't compile down there somewhere wherever there's a return. Where's your final return? There isn't one. So down at the bottom, you would return true, comma nil. Yeah, there you go. Like that. So now you've returned a tuple that says it is okay and there is no error. This is an incredibly common pattern you'll find
Okay.
when using Go functions. In this case, I wouldn't do Boolean and error. I would just return error. But now let's go back to the Ziti router function that's right above it, or the file right above it. Where is the place that you called it in here? Yeah, so now this shouldn't compile. The fact that it does compile confuses me. Is this not referencing the same file?
It is.
How
Let
is
me
that
make sure I
compiling?
saved the file. Let's save.
Go back to the main.go. This should be red, indicating that you have not used the return values.
It seems it recognizes the new definition.
I expected this to be to yell at you, telling you that you're not actually using the return statements, or maybe it's a warning. Is there a warning in here? Can you I don't see any warnings or anything.
I don't see any warning.
I'm surprised. So this is like one of those things that I rely on my IDE to point out.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any of them your router package in here? Nope.
Doesn't seem
So
to be snapping to my current view.
let's go to where you were invoking it, and
Okay.
let's assign a couple of variables. Let's assign OK on line 55 right here. Yeah, OK. No. We're going to assign the variables. So on the far left, we would say OK, comma ERR colon equals, and then util.log version check. Yeah, like that. And now you have to make use of those variables.
Right.
So a common pattern that I always have to Google because I don't type it enough is the if okay go lang. So in the in the on line 55, actually, I'm pretty sure, yeah, on line 55, you would type, instead of okay error and colon equals, you would say if space, and then at the end of this, drop a semicolon. I'll get rid of that if okay. Yep. And then okay, and then open curly brace, close curly brace, close curly, and then hit enter. So if it's okay, we're going to do something, and then in this case, we'd have to use error in order for this to keep going. But
Yeah.
let's not use error. Instead, we're going to drop an underscore on it. So instead of ERR, no, instead of the ERR on line 55,
Mhm.
we're going to simply ignore ERR by using an underscore. And we're only doing this just for education, right? Like, so that's a perfectly valid Go statement there.
Yep.
And now you're ignoring the response by telling the compiler, I understand that you're returning error. I don't particularly care. All right. Anyway, this was just a learning exercise for that too. So that's I probably would have started by having log release version check return an error, and then testing for the error in each of these places, and then taking some action if error was not nil. In the common, if error doesn't equal nil, then do something else pattern.
So you would have you would decide whether or not to log it at all, or how to log it in each component, rather than centralizing that.
Uh, I might. I don't know if I would. This is the reason why I wanted to have this discussion is because I don't know if you chose this or not. After I went through and did this sort of stuff, I might convert to the way that you did it because then I don't have to log it everywhere. But I don't get the option in each of these. So, like you've written a library function, one that is meant to be reused.
Right.
Generally speaking, I don't like my logic to be reused like that. I would probably favor returning an error if it was me, and I would let whoever called my function decide if they want to log it or not.
Okay. Then,
And
yeah,
that
I
would be
guess
why that would be why I would return an error.
I think put another way, you would have preferred, you might have started with, just on principle, a more narrowly scoped function for the library. One that
Yeah,
doesn't assume you want to log it, but rather only performs the version check and then allows the caller to decide how to
e-
handle that situation.
exactly. Now, to keep this thought, because all we're doing is thought experiment, to keep it
I'm with
going,
you.
I very well might have then put it back again because of this particular function and what it is, you know. So I was just wondering if you had gone through that process in your own head as well. Also, it would let me show you how to return a tuple, and let me show you how to ignore the return.
Totally.
So
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it was more of a leap in logic. I thought, what in this case, I want to perform the same things for each component. And I was optimizing as a newcomer to the project, I was optimizing in my mind for like the visual impact of more broad changes, and having just one line added to each component, aside from the imports, seemed like a less intrusive change to me, and keeping everything tidy inside of the utility function seemed
yep,
like a more minimal, like a lighter lift to me.
yep. Now to keep this fun train rolling, we could take your utility function, turn it into an init block, simply import it for its side effect, and then we would be able to, you wouldn't even have a line down on the main, that main line would disappear then. Follow me?
In each component, because as
No,
they're
no. Yeah,
because
everywhere
if
that
they
you have
call
called the function, you would no longer need that second line,
I
right?
think I
So
understand, as long as you're importing the utility package, that function would be initialized
the init function would be
automatically,
initial. That's right.
and
And
then this
then
line would go away right here.
that's exactly right. And then you would have to include the underscore in your import statement because now you are importing that package for its singular
Gotcha.
side effect.
But this util function may not be new in some cases. It was
Uh,
already being imported for its, a normal import.
are you sure? Delete your line 55 and through 57.
Well, it does show that I added this one, when we started working on this, and so that's the case for ZD Router, but we
Others
would have
might have
to
already included the
others may
package.
have already imported the utility. I mean, I didn't invent the
Yeah.
utility package. That
Yep.
was already there. I just added a
Yep.
function.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. This because I mean I was able to scan, like, this is not a very long file. The only place in here that uses util dot is this particular function.
Right.
So
So in this
so if
case,
you
I
were,
added it. Yeah.
that's right. And if you were to remove lines 55 to 57, it would complain that your
Yes.
function your package is no longer imported and
I
used.
think if I save it, it's just gonna drop those imports. Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, all interesting goisms.
Yep. It's definitely been interesting working with it. That automation in particular made me do a double take at first, but now I think it's useful.
So going back to the actual pull request, the 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 panics in there. You know, you said we already have a soft fail.
Um, we look at it in the IDE instead, so I can
Sure.
look at the definitions. Here's this file.
Probably want to undo any weird changes we have been goofing around with. All right. So you said you had a soft change, a soft return, and then there's the parse tolerant function.
You think we should undo the stuff we added?
Yeah, you don't need to return Boolean and
Okay.
error and all that sort of stuff. I do think adding the debug to warn change is useful though, like or at least an
Yes.
info. See, the other thing about doing this on the behalf of the command line is the command line does not get a chance to decide, right? Like it may or may not care.
Warn will still be emitted, but it will go to standard error, I would expect. I could be wrong about that, though. It depends on how
I mean,
pdeclogger works.
it's a perfectly reasonable answer, but I don't know. I just don't know. Could be.
Well, info is
A
fine.
lot of times in a logger you don't want that because um when you have
Fragments the log file.
yeah, totally. Yeah. Jumped it. You're
And it's
what
redundant.
was
If you've got if you have an explicit schema for where the log level is always knowable, then having it go to a different file descriptor is redundant.
okay, so you can get the current build version and then you parse that. How why are there two different errors then? So one was you can't even get to the GitHub um URL. Is that what that one is?
That's what this one is. Yeah, this
And
function
then
already existed, and it fetches the version from the API.
latest GitHub release is not used in the next four lines, right? Where is that used? Okay, way down
That's
there.
used right down
So
here.
so
Yeah.
another interesting thing is you are performing that operation long before you ever use it. Generally speaking,
Mm.
if it was me, I would move lines 31 to 35 down to lines 46 to 47 because I keep it as close to where I use it as possible. You have to put it in 41 to 42 now.
Looks like I have to be before this because this is just a continuation of the if. Oh no, if else. I see. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
right
Another
there.
one right there.
41 to 42. Yep. Yep. Like that. So I always keep my code as close as possible like that. But now
That'll make sense.
we also have changed the behavior because we no longer do that soft return before doing the parsing issue.
Well, in
So
this case, we're getting that from inside the project, so that's not one that's likely to fail. That's just
uh,
assuming that that's just getting a version from the package itself. That's
and if it were to fail, what is
mm,
the current build version that's returned?
should be 0.0.0 would be the
Well, it's
version if it were a development build, and it would be a release
no,
version if it were.
you're assuming though. I'm
That's just
saying
what I
let's go
remember from how this works. That it's something to do with ZDCI.
go back to
Um,
where you were. Go back to where you were for
okay,
me. Go into parse tolerant. That's what I want to see
so
because that's
this
the
is
one that's
a third-party library that we're using to toler to parse the simver using. We're importing simver up above,
yep,
and this is going to accept with or without a lowercase v prefix.
yep.
We're going to
But
return
but
back
the only
an
reason
object.
why I am focusing on it is because line 32, the get version does not throw an error, so I don't care. Line 33 throws an error and then panics, which is why I'm focusing on 33. I want to know
Okay,
what 33's behavior is if you feed it a nil or if you feed it something it can't parse. Like what will it return if it's unparsable? It says it throws an error. I mean, we can tell it throws an error, right? So
yeah,
you don't really have to go into it. But go back to where you were again. Um, so it will return either a version or an error. And if an error comes back, then
right.
what do we want to do? Panicking would make all the ZD commands not function. So we can't panic here. Like if it fails for whatever the reason, we need to just warn and keep going.
Okay,
Just say, hey, because panic would be terrible if it actually did panic. Because no matter what we do, the user now has no recourse but to wait for the next release or to get an
right.
older version. So
Yeah, I
I would
see
say
what you mean.
panicking in this would be bad.
So warn then,
Yeah, the same
and
would be
then
true
handle
for
that
40.
error by or by returning harmlessly.
Probably. Yeah, Well, actually, let's yeah, probably at this point, we know this is no longer going to do anything that we want it to do. We can just return out. Yeah. And that would be true for lines 40 to 42 as
Right.
well.
This assignment is attempting to parse from the project's build environment what is the build version from ZDCI. And in the absence of that, the constant 000 takes over.
Now, also, my brain notices this stuff immediately, but I can see you don't use current build server until lines 48 and 49 again. Me, I would move 32, well, maybe the comment 31 through 37. I would move all that stuff, down below too. But what we're doing here is we're doing that shell game because you're using both of those in that if block down there. So this is just how my brain is going. I'm just taking you through my process as my brain comes up with it. I would
Okay.
probably I would probably move it, but we very well might end up getting the exact same situation again, where the code looks identical to what it looked like before.
Yeah, we
You
just
know what I
flipped it
mean?
around. Look, now
Yes,
it's right
right.
on here.
Now we've done exactly. So this
So
might not be worthwhile at all. It also
no,
it
we're
all
back to
fits
where we
on
started.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. But and it all fits on one page too. So like the closeness of code is not as important when you can see it all. But again, I'm just going through my process here, just so you can understand what I'm doing. Next thing I see is lines 31 and 32 appear to me to be totally redundant, and 33 to 35 appear to be worthless.
Let's do the first
So
one first. You're talking about this seems, did you say useless or redundant?
it seems entirely redundant and entirely useless. What
So
this is doing is it's
no
taking
need
a
to assign
string.
this in advance on a
It's
separate, like stylistically, just put it here.
You can do that for starters. For a second, you should, I would expect, be able to simply create a version that is of 0000. And maybe parse is the
Hmm.
easy way to do that. Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's the easy way to do that, right? And so for me, if this was me, I would probably take the risk and put an underscore instead of error on line 31 and say like if this errors, it's going to be a cold day in hell.
I got you. Yeah.
And
It's
then I would
just
just ignore it.
a reasonable risk acceptance at that
Yeah,
point.
for sure. Yeah, and I would get rid of the if, error, all that. I don't have to worry about that panic anymore, and that's the whole reason why I went through this is because
Okay.
now I don't have to worry about that panic.
Okay. So
Yep. And then I would
now
look to see where are you
we're
using development
guaranteed,
server?
like it's reasonable to assume this is going to succeed and I'm going to end up with a sumver object for my expected development sumver object.
For sure, because it's a string literal of 0000, right? Like,
Yeah.
now do me
Nothing
one
can go
favor.
wrong here.
Well, do me one favor. Does semver have a new function? So in Go, a lot of times you'll get a function that is a create prototype type function that lets you make a new object. So
Hmm.
if you type semver dot, I just want to see if that does a dot. If there's an n, type an n.
Okay. Go back to it.
Yeah, I will explore
Start
the
type.
API by just typing n and then like, is there a new function? So
Yes.
yeah, and then it takes a pointer to a. Oh, see, that's like, oh no, it returns a pointer. It takes a string. See, so now instead of a new, instead of a parse, you would do new, and so get rid of the parse and just do new.
Same string in the parens.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me. Yep. And then
Okay.
does new return an error?
Yeah.
It does. Okay. So it's exact. So I wouldn't have looked at parse. I would have looked at new. This would be how I would have just done it normally. And it does the exact same thing, looks exactly the same, but gives a different idea to me as the reader that, hey, I'm just making a new one. And I never
Yeah.
expect this thing to fail because I am telling it the literal.
Okay.
Anyway, all right.
That
That's
makes
all that.
sense.
Now, what's interesting, also interesting, is by doing this, parse and new are returning different types. What is, if you hover over new for a second, is it returning a pointer or is it returning? Yeah, it's returning a semver pointer. Does parse return a pointer or not a pointer? A pulse tournament. It's right there. It returns a not pointer, which is kind of dumb. I don't know why there's a difference there. I would not expect there to be a difference. It's probably
It's a
just an
version
oversight.
string.
Well, what's the other one?
The other one was a function named parse tolerant, which accepts a the
No,
semver
no,
string.
no, no, no. What does new return? Go back to new again.
Okay, function new returns a pointer.
So see, but it's still a version. It's just a pointer version.
I
It's not
see.
it's not a not pointer, right? It's
And
not the
that's the
regular.
difference between a pointer to a memory space that's shared by all pointers to that memory space or address space versus like a duplicate, a separate
Yeah,
variable.
with a pointer, you are going to be able to mutate whatever's inside of it, and then pass that pointer around, which things will be able to mutate. If you pass it by version or not by pointer, by reference instead of by value, yeah, if you point it by value instead of by reference, then when somebody mutates it, they'll be mutating a different copy of
Right,
that version.
right.
So what I'm keying on here is the fact that new returns a pointer, whereas all the other ones
Yeah,
don't.
I see that.
I find that bizarre. So a lot of times what you would do here is you would dereference that pointer back in your code to get it to be a not pointer, or you can use parse because it does what you want it to do on the equals. Like like
Okay.
I don't know why EQ down there takes a not pointer version and new returns a pointer.
How would
Like
I
I
have
would
dereferenced the pointer from new?
you just put a star in front of it or an
So I would
ampersand.
have
Yeah. Yes, a star.
right there.
Yep. On line so here no, here what you would do is put an ampersand in front of all this. On line 31, in front of the SEM
Okay.
ampersand. That mm,
Uh,
no. No, it's
ampersand.
ampersand. Yeah, it takes the oh, it is a pointer. Put a star there. No, it doesn't like the star. Instead, go ahead and put that back again. I thought that you could take the I could that you could dereference the pointer and get the on line 45, put an ampersand in front of that. No, star. Jesus. There we
There,
go.
now it's happy. So
All right.
new, you would
So,
dereference it with a star if it's a
well,
pointer.
you can turn it into a the actual reference by putting the star in front of it, as opposed to taking the address of the so like go back up above, leave that star there, but in semver.new, change the new to parse, and that will return a struct that is not a pointer. So now, no,
Right.
no, no, no. Now up in line 31, put an ampersand in front of semver.
Okay.
That should I thought. Can you wrap it in parens?
Maybe in front of the parse instead?
I don't. I didn't
No.
think so. Maybe I don't. I thought that there's there's definitely a way to take the address of a struct. And my Goisms are failing me right now. You can
Well,
definitely turn that thing into a pointer using an address of operator, which is the ampersand. I don't quite know why. I don't know. I thought that you would be able to do that. I'll have to look that up. I don't know that one.
this accomplishes the same thing as using parse without the star.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Do you like new or parse better for
Well, since it changes your
best
EQ function,
practices?
I would put parse back.
Okay.
And generally speaking, you would favor the not pointer for its immutability. No, no, put parse back.
Doing it.
Yeah. Oh, I see. You're just undoing. I thought you were going to type it. You favor a value so that if the values change, you're not mutating something that shouldn't have been mutated, for example. This can lead to lots of crazy stuff when you start passing structs around where
Hmm.
you think that you're changing something, but you actually don't. So this is a good learning thing is to go back and like pass a struct by value, mutate a field inside of it, and then return and then print the value. You would expect it to have changed, but it won't have changed.
Okay.
Make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So now we've got all that to do parse. That looks good. I have no panics to worry about. Just that one panic. We turned it to a warn. It looks good. Um, I think I mean, I think this is the meat and the potatoes of it, right? Like, I don't know if there's anything else to look at. Oh yeah, it's like the entire PR.
Yeah, that's definitely this function is where all the action is happening. So the in plain English, if we're able to sanity check our versions from the remote and that is the API and from the project, then we move along from there to um, we're not going to compare if it is a development build. We're just not going to we're not going to check to see if there's an update available because it's a development build. But we are going to log at a debug level that this is a development build, that
Yep.
not a release build. And then if the latest is greater than the current build, so in the case of a release version that
Yep.
anyone runs at any time in the future, if there's a update available, print the banner, say you can get it from here in GitHub,
Yep.
and then if it's and then log that the current release build is superseded by at a debug level, in addition to printing that to standard out.
Yep. Now, out of curiosity, latest GitHub release and current build Semver,
Yeah,
those are both versions, right?
yeah.
Can
Those are both
can you
version objects.
I wonder if you could declare a function that is on a version right here, and that does that string concatenation for you. So instead of doing the v plus, you could just define a function right here. I don't know if you can define. I don't know if you can bolt a function onto a struct that's not in the package that it came from.
So that
So
that might be like instead of like overload the stringification
exactly.
function here so that
Yep.
it also adds a v to the front.
Exactly. Yeah, I noticed that you're doing the v plus twice there, and every time I see a reused logic like that, I'm like, why isn't that a function?
Yeah, that would work.
So if you
I
go
don't
down the
have
line,
the time right
yeah,
now
I know. Uh,
because we're kind of up against the clock
yep.
to add it, but I take your meaning and I'll go ahead and explore that and send an update to the
Okay, cool.
PR.
I'll
Yeah,
probably try it out too just to make sure it would work. Can you push this little bit of changes in, and I'll go give it a real quick test?
will do.
Cool. Well, that was
Yeah.
a fun little go session, Ken. Went longer than I expected to, but we should know better. I talk a lot.
No, it's all good. Yeah, thanks so much for the mentorship, and I'll send this over to you.
Cool. All right, man. We'll see you next time.
Oops, later.